there's something about Johnny Depp that feels different, like he never really belonged to Hollywood in the way most actors do. He showed up, sure, became one of the biggest stars on the planet, made a fortune, became a household name. But there was always this sense that he was uncomfortable with all of it. That the fame thing, the celebrity machine, it wasn't what he signed up for. And maybe that's what makes his story so fascinating. Because it's not just about success. It's about what happens when you get everything you thought you wanted and realize it might be killing you. He was born John Christopher Depp II in Owensboro, Kentucky, in 1963. His childhood wasn't stable. His family moved around constantly, more than 20 times before he was a teenager. His father was a civil engineer, his mother a waitress, and the household was tense. There was fighting, instability, the kind of environment that leaves marks on a kid. Depp has talked about how his mother was tough on him, unpredictable, how he never quite knew what version of her he'd get on any given day. That kind of upbringing does something to you. It makes you wary, makes you learn to read people, to adapt, to disappear when you need to. Those are survival skills, but they're also the early training ground for an actor, even if he didn't know it yet. When he was a teenager, his family settled in Florida. He dropped out of high school at 15 to chase music. That was his first love, not acting. He wanted to be a rock star. He played guitar in a band called The Kids, and they were decent, good enough to open for bands like Iggy Pop and the Ramones. For a while, it looked like that might be his path. But the band broke up, and Depp found himself in Los Angeles, married young to a makeup artist named Lori Allison, trying to figure out what came next. He was 20, broke, no clear direction. And that's when Nicolas Cage, a friend at the time, suggested he try acting. Not because Depp had ever expressed interest, but because Cage saw something in him. Some quality that might work on screen. Depp met with an agent, did a few auditions, and landed a role in the horror film A Nightmare on Elm Street. He played a teenager who gets killed in one of the movie's more memorable death scenes, sucked into a bed and spit out as a geyser of blood. It wasn't much, but it was a start. He did a few more small roles, nothing that stood out, and then in 1987 he got cast in a new TV show called 21 Jump Street. It was about young-looking cops going undercover in high schools, and Depp played Officer Tom Hansen. The show became a hit almost immediately, and Depp became a teen idol overnight. Girls screamed for him, his face was on magazine covers, he was the guy every network wanted. And he hated it. He's been pretty open about how much he resented that period. He felt like a product, a commodity being sold to teenagers. He didn't want to be a heartthrob, didn't want to be famous for his looks. He wanted to act, to do interesting work, to disappear into characters. But the show had him locked in, and the more popular it got, the more trapped he felt. He started showing up late, acting out, trying to get fired. At one point, he even asked the writers to kill off his character. They wouldn't. The show was making too much money. So he stuck it out, counting down the days until his contract was up, and when it finally ended, he made a decision. He was going to do the opposite of what Hollywood expected from him. That's when he started working with Tim Burton. Their first collaboration was Edward Scissorhands in 1990, and it was the role that changed everything for Depp. He played this gentle, tragic character with scissors for hands, living in a pastel suburb, unable to touch anyone without cutting them. It was weird, sweet, heartbreaking, and Depp brought something deeply human to it despite the absurdity of the premise. The movie was a hit, and more importantly, it showed that Depp could carry a film and that he was willing to take risks. From that point on, he became known for choosing strange, offbeat roles. He played an undercover cop who falls for a deaf woman in Benny and June, a quirky loner who takes care of his developmentally disabled brother in What's Eating Gilbert Grape, the worst director of all time in Ed Wood. These weren't blockbuster roles. They were character pieces, movies that let him disappear. Then came the big turn. In 2003, he took a role in a Disney movie based on a theme park ride. Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. Everyone thought it was a terrible idea. Pirate movies didn't work anymore, they said. Disney was nervous, but Depp had a vision for the character of Captain Jack Sparrow. He based him on Keith Richards and cartoon skunk Pepe Le Pew. Played him as a swaggering, slurring, eyeliner-wearing trickster who might be drunk or might be a genius or might be both. Disney executives watched early footage and panicked. They thought Depp was ruining the movie, but he stuck to his guns, and when the film came out, it was a massive hit. Jack Sparrow became iconic, one of the most beloved characters in modern film. Depp got an Oscar nomination. The movie made over $600 million. Suddenly, he was a movie star in a way he'd never been before. The sequels followed, and with each one, the paychecks got bigger. At his peak, Depp was one of the highest-paid actors in the world, making upwards of $20 million per film, sometimes more. He bought an island in the Bahamas, a chateau in France, a collection of homes in Los Angeles, expensive art, guitars, wine. He lived extravagantly, the way rock stars do, and for a while it seemed like the dream. He was famous, wealthy, doing the work he wanted, but cracks were forming. His personal life started to unravel publicly. He'd been in a long-term relationship with French actress and singer Vanessa Paradis, and they had 2 kids together. For years, that relationship seemed solid, one of the few stable things in his life. But in 2012, they split. Not long after, Depp started dating Amber Heard, a young actress he met on the set of The Rum Diary. They got married in 2015. 15 months later, Heard filed for divorce and accused Depp of domestic abuse. She showed up to court with a bruise on her face, got a restraining order, and the story exploded. The details were ugly. Heard claimed Depp had been physically and emotionally abusive throughout their relationship, that he'd hit her, thrown things at her. The case dragged on for years, and in 2022, it went to trial in Virginia. The trial was televised, streamed live, and it became a media circus. People watched it like a soap opera, dissecting every moment, every piece of evidence, every expression on either of their faces. Audio recordings were played where Heard admitted to hitting Depp, where she mocked him, told him no one would believe he was a victim. Text messages showed Depp writing horrific things about Heard, violent fantasies, ugly language. Witnesses testified on both sides. Experts argued about photographs, about metadata, about whether injuries were real or faked. It was brutal, invasive, and deeply sad. The jury ultimately sided with Depp on most counts. They found that Heard had defamed him, awarded him over $10 million in damages. Heard won one counterclaim, was awarded $2 million, but the financial outcome almost didn't matter. What mattered was the public perception. Depp's fans celebrated, treated it like a victory for truth. Heard's supporters said it was a setback for abuse survivors, that the trial had been turned into entertainment, that a woman's credibility had been destroyed on a global stage. The whole thing left a stain that won't wash off easily. And through it all, Depp's career tanked. He lost his role in the Fantastic Beasts franchise, got dropped from Pirates of the Caribbean, saw projects disappear. The studios didn't want the controversy, didn't want to deal with the headlines. For a few years, he was essentially blacklisted, at least from major Hollywood productions. He did smaller films, European projects, things that flew under the radar. He went on tour with his band, showed up at film festivals, tried to rebuild, but the damage was done. There's another layer to all this, one that doesn't get talked about as much. Depp's financial troubles. In 2017, he sued his former business managers, claiming they'd mismanaged his money, cost him hundreds of millions of dollars through negligence and fraud. They countersued, said Depp had spent himself into ruin, that he'd blown through $2 million a month on wine, property, staff, a lifestyle that was unsustainable. The details that came out were staggering. He reportedly spent $30,000 a month on wine, $40,000 on a sound engineer who did nothing but feed him lines through an earpiece on set because he'd stopped learning scripts, $3 million to blast Hunter S. Thompson's ashes out of a cannon. The numbers were absurd, the kind of spending that only makes sense when you've lost touch with reality. His managers claimed they'd warned him repeatedly, but Depp didn't want to hear it. He wanted to live the way he wanted to live, consequences be damned. And maybe that's the through line in his whole story. He's always been someone who resists control, who pushes back against expectations, who does what he wants even when it's destructive. That's what made him interesting as an actor, but it's also what's made his life chaotic. So where does that leave him now? He's 61, still acting, still making music, still showing up. He directed a film recently, starred in a few European productions, got standing ovations at Cannes. Some people have forgiven him, some haven't, and some never took a side to begin with. He's not the megastar he was a decade ago, probably never will be again. But he's still here, still working, still trying to figure out what comes next. The thing about Johnny Depp is that his story doesn't fit neatly into any category. He's not a straightforward hero or villain, not a cautionary tale or a redemption arc. He's just a person who got famous, who struggled with that fame, who made mistakes, who got hurt, who hurt others, who lost almost everything, and who's still trying to make sense of it all. And maybe that's what keeps people interested. Because his story feels human in a way that a lot of celebrity stories don't. It's messy and complicated and unfinished. He's talked in interviews about how acting saved him, how it gave him a way to escape himself, to become other people, to avoid the discomfort of being Johnny Depp. And that makes sense when you look at his career. His best roles are the ones where he disappears completely, where you forget you're watching a movie star and just see the character. Captain Jack, Edward Scissorhands, Sweeney Todd, Hunter S. Thompson in Fear and Loathing, even his smaller roles like in Dead Man or Donnie Brasco. He's always been at his best when he's not himself. But real life doesn't let you disappear like that. You can't method act your way through a divorce or a lawsuit or financial ruin. You have to show up as yourself, flaws and all, and deal with the consequences of your choices. And Depp hasn't always been great at that. He's admitted to struggling with addiction, with anger, with relationships. He's acknowledged that he's made mistakes, though he's also insisted that he's been wronged in ways the public doesn't fully understand. Both things can be true. There's a part of his fan base that's fiercely loyal, that sees him as a misunderstood artist who's been targeted unfairly. They point to the trial, to the evidence that came out, to the recordings of Heard admitting to violence. They argue that he was abused too, that male victims aren't taken seriously, that the media was biased against him until the truth came out. And there's some validity to that. The initial response to Heard's accusations was largely to believe her, and Depp was condemned quickly, lost work before any trial happened. The court of public opinion moved fast, but there's also a part of the public that remains skeptical, that believes the relationship was mutually toxic, that both of them did damage to each other, and that the power dynamics were complicated. They argue that Depp's substance abuse, his documented rage, his own text messages all paint a picture of someone who was, at minimum, unstable and volatile. They point out that just because Heard wasn't a perfect victim doesn't mean she wasn't a victim. And that's complicated too. The truth, as it usually is, probably lives somewhere in the middle. Relationships, especially toxic ones, are rarely black and white. People hurt each other in ways that are hard to quantify or explain. And when those people are famous, when their private pain becomes public spectacle, it gets even messier. Everyone has an opinion, everyone takes a side, and the actual human beings involved get reduced to symbols in a culture war they never asked to be part of. What's clear is that Johnny Depp's life hasn't gone the way anyone expected. Not the kid who wanted to be a rock star, not the teen idol who hated being famous, not the quirky character actor who became a blockbuster star, and certainly not the man who ended up in court defending his reputation on live television. He's lived a life that's been dramatic, excessive, painful, and very, very public. And through it all, he's remained this enigmatic figure, someone who feels both accessible and unknowable at the same time. He's given us incredible performances, characters that will last long after the scandals fade. He's also given us a reminder that fame doesn't fix anything, that money doesn't insulate you from pain, and that talent doesn't make you immune to your own worst impulses. He's a reminder that people are complicated, that they contain multitudes, and that sometimes the most interesting stories are the ones that don't have clear endings. Johnny Depp is still out there, still creating, still dealing with the fallout of choices made years ago. He'll probably keep acting until he can't anymore, keep playing guitar, keep living in that space between the character and the man. And people will